Wow, I honestly was not expecting to make another video, but I feel like this is a topic I probably should talk about. And before you ask, yes, Quachi and I are doing just fine. Say hi, Quachi. What do you mean? Yes, I'm doing a video. Because it's an important topic to talk about in regards to cinema and how the movie industry should go moving forward. No, you can't have my leftover Chinese food. Get out of here. Always trying to eat my leftover Chinese food. Anyway, today's topic has only been very recently announced, and it's already gathering a lot of backlash from certain people. Now, let's start from the beginning. A couple weeks ago, Warner Brothers announced that their movie Wonder Woman 1984, which has already been delayed a couple of times, was going to release on Christmas Day both theatrically and on their streaming service HBO Max. It'll be made for free on HBO Max for about a month, and assuming the Wonder Woman 1984 movie would still be in theaters a little bit afterwards. Kind of doing a more finishing up a more traditional theatrical run. Anyway, from what I can gather, Warner Brothers did talk this over a little bit with Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot, and compensation was made. Gal Gadot gained roughly $10 million in compensation, and many people, when they heard the news, seemed to be really up for it, and it's already gained a lot of very good early reviews. The stuff that's not been so warmly received is the announcement that Warner Brothers' entire 2021 slate, which at this time includes 17 movies, will be getting the same treatment. They will be released both theatrically and on HBO Max on the same day, no additional cost on streaming for about a month, and then, of course, the movies would assumably finish up a more traditional theatrical run. You would think this would get a lot of good response, and there has been some good response. More on that later in the video. But it's also gotten a lot of backlash. This started when Legendary Pictures, the studio that provided most of the budget for Godzilla vs. Kong and Dune, was reported looking into taking legal action against Warner Brothers for this move. In addition to blocking a Netflix's attempt to purchase the rights for Godzilla vs. Kong, Warner Brothers also announced this same plan for those movies without giving any advance warning to Legendary Pictures. And since Legendary Pictures did provide 75% of the budget for Godzilla vs. Kong and Dune, a little heads up would be nice. If not sitting down to actually talk it over in a more formal meeting. And of course, Christopher Nolan has been very much against this, which is no surprise considering he really insisted that Tenet get a strictly theatrical release and run earlier this summer. More on that later. And a few other people are understandably pretty pissed as well. According to some reports, there are some insiders that are now referring to Warner Brothers as former brothers. Get it? Because you used to be my brother, but now you're nothing to me. Wow. Don't know if that's a good joke or a bad joke, but I'm gonna leave it in. So obviously, there is a lot to take in considering that this is a pretty radical move from Warner Brothers that has really no precedent. So, let's start with the first part of this. The fact that most of these people did not get any advance warning Warner Brothers was going to do this. Now, when this was announced for just Wonder Woman 1984, a lot of people were pretty happy about it. But of course, keep in mind, the people that worked on that film were given some sort of compensation, and there was some time to talk it over a bit before just simply announcing it. For the rest of these movies, apparently no one was given any advance warning or had to sit down and talk this over with them. And apparently people like James Gunn is disappointed by this a bit. So, yeah, if you're going to do such a pretty drastic move in terms of releasing a big budget movie like The Suicide Squad or The Matrix 4 by doing both a theatrical and a streaming release, you should warn a brother before you do it. See, I can make jokes too. So, yes, when it comes to announcing that this is their plan, Warner Brothers was kind of an asshole about it, not really giving any kind of warning about this. Something like this should be talked over with the people that work very hard on these films because they should and do have some sort of a say in terms of release strategy, marketing, all that kind of stuff. So, in terms of executing this announcement, it went horribly. In fact, due to probably this horrible execution, Christopher Nolan has basically said that the people that worked on these movies are now working with the worst streaming service. Although I want to bring up that Quibi has been shut down in less than a year after its launch. I don't know of anyone that actually uses the Apple streaming service. You don't really hear anything from Hulu, and it's rumored that Hulu is going to be absorbed into another streaming service. Netflix keeps canceling their original TV shows after only 3 seasons. Disney Plus, with the exception of The Mandalorian, doesn't really have any other original content that's worth talking about. As for Prime Video, their original content's fairly solid overall, so I have no major complaints there. So, honestly, right now, HBO Max is technically kinda towards the top in terms of streaming service quality. But that's really a minor point. I just wanted to bring that up. Actually, another reason I wanted to bring this up was because it's been rumored that one of the reasons Legendary is taking action against Warner Brothers is that they don't really have much faith that doing a streaming release for Godzilla vs. Kong and Dune would help them with their franchise building because they want to do several movies for Dune and a TV show for Dune as well. And they do still want to have some sort of a future for their monster first in terms of Godzilla and King Kong. Although I just want to point out that they did seem willing to talk to Netflix about them purchasing the rights for Godzilla vs. Kong. So why is that streaming service better than another streaming service, just from an objective point of view? And keep in mind that not only has Netflix made several sequels to several of their original movies, as well as there are apparently being talks for a cinematic universe with the movie Extraction at the heart of it, as well as having original movies like Roma that have gotten some Academy attention. But Disney Plus and the MCU are also using TV shows to help further explore and set up their cinematic universe and connect them to movies. Obviously, you can do franchise building with a streaming service, so I don't really see what the issue with that there is. Now let's get to the real meat and grit of this controversy that's around Christopher Nolan. He's obviously very mad that this was just announced with really no warning and he claims it's not really putting any faith into the movie theaters. Now, like I said, when it comes to announcing this and executing their transition into this strategy, Warner Brothers did botch that up. But Christopher Nolan, you insisting on an exclusive theatrical release for Tenet in arguably the heat and prime of the coronavirus pandemic was a stupid move. You claim that, considering the circumstances, it still had a successful run. But that's the thing you don't seem to get. You should not be releasing a movie like this in this manner during this time. I think that's behind a I think that's the real reason people don't seem to wrap their heads around what's going on. It seems like a lot of insiders in the industry think that once the vaccine's out, everything will go to status quo for the movie industry. People will pay and pack up movie theaters as per usual. Except we can't go back to the status quo. Even before the pandemic, the release between a theatrical run and going straight to video was shrinking and shrinking, getting closer to each other. And like I said before, streaming was already on the rise in terms of how people consume content. Like I said with Netflix, they have multiple original movies that have produced or spawned multiple sequels. Like I said earlier, the movie Extraction, starring Chris Hemsworth, there's been talks about building a cinematic universe in that universe. And they have Academy recognized movies like Roma. So, streaming has a lot of credit to it. Also, I like to point out that not everyone can afford to go see a movie in the theater. I mean, you've got movie ticket prices, then you've got food and such. Honestly, a movie on a streaming service that you pay like $12 a month for is looking pretty favorable to seeing one movie one time for anything around $20 or up for that one time experience. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the movies, theaters, and more on that later. But not only can not everyone actually afford to go see a movie in the theater, but this could actually help movie theaters in the long haul. Granted, I'm not very bright when it comes to how the economic part of this industry works in regards to movie theaters and how studios work with them. I know that a certain part of the ticket price goes back to the studio. But if a movie is getting both a theatrical release and a streaming release on the same day, chances are the studios aren't going to ask for as much of a cut of the ticket price, if any at all. That could lead to lower prices in terms of food and refreshment. And it could weed out some of those people that just don't really make the movie theater experience that enjoyable. You know those guys that treat going to movie theater simply be the same thing as like watching a movie from home. You know those people, those that talk during the movie, that text during the movie, that sneak in their vape pen or whatever. Those kinds of people kind of take away some of the magic of the movie theater experience for a lot of people. But they won't be there if that movie is easily accessible from their own home. So there are some benefits to this as well. And let me bring back up again that there was some positive reception to this news of a release schedule. There's even been some backlash against Christopher Nolan saying, hey, there's still a pandemic going on. This is probably the safest way for people to see these movies we want to see. And going back to Wonder Woman 1984, Patty Jenkins said something along the lines that there comes a point where you simply want your art to be seen. You want people to see what you've made. And this is something she has expressed before, even before the pandemic, saying that she initially wanted to push back the movie release before the COVID pandemic because they wanted more time to work on it. But now, after having that time to work on it, she just wanted everyone to see the movie right now. So, yeah, there does come a point where I would imagine a lot of people who work on this movie just want other people to watch it and see what a great thing they made. Now, of course, while they did botch the execution of announcing this and warning people ahead of time, I have to imagine there's still time for some big stars attached to these upcoming movies to be properly compensated, like Keanu Reeves, Will Smith, Margot Robbie, etc. Although I do find it a little hard to feel sorry for these people because they're still getting paid millions of dollars. Granted, they're professionals and they love working with movies and such, but it's kind of feel hard to feel bad for the people that are still going to end up being paid millions of dollars. And plus, these actors have already been paid to appear in the movies that are set to be released. So I am kind of being a little nitpicky or petty there, but I did want to bring up that point as well. And going back to what I said earlier, we can never go back to the status quo before the pandemic. Even if, in the best case scenario, everyone gets a vaccine by, let's say, April. Professionals still say it could be at least a year after the vaccine is rolled out before it can be completely safe to go to movie theaters. Okay, completely safe, I should have said, but still, you get my point. And plus, there are going to be people that just won't feel comfortable going back to movie theater at all. There are those people. And while I did go see a couple of movies in theaters during this pandemic, I still had to take the proper precautions and such. And even though there were certain restrictions in terms of capacity and such, there are very few people out right now. And I can imagine that even if by April all restrictions in terms of movie theaters are lifted and they can be fully functioning, they are never going to be packed like they once were. And plus, like I said, streaming has been on the rise. And we've already had similar experiments like this with Disney Plus having Mulan on its site for an additional $30 cost. Or having Freaky, the Blumhouse movie, go to straight to video after, I think, only 3 weeks in theaters. We have to think about how to properly adjust to this kind of post-COVID movie theater going experience. Earlier this year, Ben Affleck, major actor who is going to reprise his role as Batman in Zack Snyder's Justice League, premiering on HBO Max. He thinks that movie theaters will still be around, but they'll only show big-budget blockbuster films. Mid-budget and low-budget films will probably most likely only go straight to video or streaming. I think that's just the kind of world we have to get used to. We can never go back to normal. And I know the term new normal has been annoying for a lot of people to hear, but it's the truth. I think a large part of why there's been so much backlash, aside from the botched execution and not talking to people regarding these projects ahead of time, is that it's changed. It's changing how people work in the industry, changing how people get paid, changing basically the entire structure of the industry. And there are going to be some bumps along the way. Trust me, there are going to be some bumps, as we've already discussed with this particular situation. But we are going to find a way where theaters can still be around, but we're going to have to get used to the fact that this is going to be a primarily streaming world now. These are my personal thoughts, obviously. Comment down below what you think in terms of this whole Warner Brothers theatrical and streaming release on the same day. Overall, I am in support of it, despite the botched execution of announcing it. But tell me your thoughts down below. I'll probably do another video later this year in terms of top 10 movies of 2020. I'm surprised I could see that many to begin with. But this is Dr. Cinema and Quadji. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you're still enjoying movies from home and that you're staying safe. So, that's all I have to say right now.